Hello, and welcome to the webDEALER Systems Training Series brought to you by the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. This series is designed to help dealers better understand and use the webDEALER system to process plate assignments, title and registration transactions, and manage plate inventory efficiently and in compliance with Texas requirements. This training provides an overview of TxDMV's vehicle weight verification guidelines and title and registration class flowchart, offering step-by-step guidance to help dealers accurately determine vehicle weight and select the correct registration class during title and registration processing. By the end of this training, you'll have a clear understanding of how to complete this process accurately and confidently. Let's go ahead and get started. On January 30th, 2026, the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles released additional resource guides to support dealers and county tax offices with determining accurate vehicle information during the title and registration processing. The vehicle weight verification guidelines assist in identifying and entering accurate vehicle weights when processing transactions using an MCO, a Texas title, or an out-of-state title. This includes how to round weights, determine computed empty weights, calculate carrying capacity, and reference acceptable sources when weight information is missing. The QR code shown with the resource will take you to the most updated revision of this form. I will remain on this slide for a few moments to allow you to scan the QR code so you can have the guideline available during this training. The title and registration class flowchart provides step-by-step guidance to determine the correct vehicle class based on the vehicle's characteristics and intended use. The flowchart also includes general guidelines to assist in selecting the appropriate registration class once the vehicle class is identified. Today's training will provide a review of these resources to ensure proper application during title processing. We will break down and explain each section of the vehicle weight verification guidelines, review examples for each evidence type within the guidelines, and determine the correct weights that should be entered for each example. Additionally, we will analyze the title and registration flowchart to understand how it works and how it will guide you in making the correct selections when processing transactions in webDEALER. The QR code shown with the resource will take you to the most updated revision of this form. I'm going to remain on this slide for a few moments to allow you to scan the QR code so you can have the resource available during this training. Registration and title bulletins, also known as RTBs, are TxDMV published communications to help relay information such as policy changes and to help provide clarification on policy changes as needed. The QR code provided on this slide will take you to RTB 010-16, determining empty weights of certain motor vehicles, which was sent out October 27, 2016. This resource will be referenced in the training a few times, so it's good to have it available. The purpose of this RTB is to provide guidance for determining the empty weight of certain motor vehicles that do not have a prior Texas record by utilizing surrendered ownership evidence, web resources, or when necessary, a weight certificate. An applicant will need to provide the intended carrying capacity for any trucks once the empty weight has been established. The empty weight plus carrying capacity cannot exceed the manufacturer's gross vehicle weight rating, or GVWR. If the GVWR needs to be established, you may request applicants provide the GVWR which they can obtain from their driver's side frame. As a reminder, empty weight may be referred to as curb weight or shipping weight. Curb and shipping weight are acceptable for use as empty weight of a vehicle. Before we proceed to the main content of this training, it's important to clarify why these resources were needed. While conducting training in various regions throughout the state, both counties and dealers regularly expressed concerns about how to review and understand the current weight and classification procedures. These concerns were validated when a review of total state returns showed that approximately 10% of returns had weight and vehicle classification errors. This training is intended to serve as a common reference point for both dealers and counties alike to ensure everyone is processing with the same understanding of the procedures. Now that we understand the need for these resources, let's jump into the vehicle weight verification guideline first. The first paragraph of the guideline provides the important distinction that this guideline does not encompass trailer transactions. Trailers often require different processing procedures in regard to weight requirements. Because of these distinct differences, they are not covered in this guideline, nor will they be covered in today's training. The first section of the guideline covers the Manufacturer's Certificate of Origin, or MCO. When determining the weight for a vehicle sold on an MCO, identify what the manufacturers listed as the empty weight, which is often listed as the shipping weight. Once you have identified what is listed on the MCO, it is important to continue on to step 2 of this process to determine the acceptable weight that will be used to process the transaction. If the weight listed directly on the MCO is used without completing the following steps, your transaction will be incorrect and will be returned. In the MCO example, the shipping weight listed is 3,589 pounds. Let's continue to step 2 of this section to determine the computed weight that will be utilized for your transaction based off of the shipping weight. When processing applications in Texas, rules require the weight listed on the MCO to be rounded up to the next 100 pounds, and then for passenger class vehicles, an additional 100 pounds must be added to that rounded total. In the example shown on the guideline, the MCO reflects 3,589 pounds. When the weight is rounded up to the next 100 pounds, we receive a new weight of 3,600 pounds. Based on rules, we would then add an additional 100 pounds, leaving us with a new empty weight of 3,700 pounds, which is the acceptable weight to be used for the passenger class vehicle title transaction. One question that has been asked regarding this determination is, what if the MCO ends in a dividend of 100 already? For example, weight on the MCO is 3,500 pounds. Would we then still round up? And the answer is yes, you would still round up since the rule states that you round up to the next 100 pounds, where the key word is next. Rules for a truck and truck tractor class vehicle are slightly different. These rules require the weight listed on the MCO to be rounded up to the next 100 pounds and use the rounded weight as your empty weight. Do not add an additional 100 pounds. In the example shown on the guideline, the MCO reflects 3,589 pounds. When this weight is rounded up to the next 100 pounds, we receive a new weight of 3,600 pounds. Based on rules for a truck and truck tractor class vehicles, we would utilize the rounded weight without adding any additional weight, leaving us with an empty weight of 3,600 pounds, which is the acceptable weight to be used for truck and truck tractor class title transactions. The third step for an MCO is only applicable to vehicles that are designed to carry a load, such as trucks, panel vans, and cargo vans, or for vehicles that were not designed specifically to carry a load, but have the capability to carry a load, and the customer states that they intend to actually carry a load on that vehicle. These types of vehicles include SUVs, crossovers, and passenger vans. An example of this would be a suburban or passenger van where the owner intends to remove the back seats so that they can carry work items. In this example, the vehicle will be required to be classified as a passenger truck and supply a carrying capacity, since they are stating they will be carrying a load. If a carrying capacity is not applicable, you will use the empty weight computed in step 2 on your transaction. If a carrying capacity is applicable, you will proceed to step 3 to determine the carrying capacity. To determine the carrying capacity, you will need to first determine the gross vehicle weight rating listed on the MCO. Once that's determined, you will then subtract the empty weight computed in step 2 from that gross weight on the MCO, and you will get the carrying capacity. To compute the carrying capacity in the example shown, we will take the gross vehicle weight rating from the MCO, which is 5,240 pounds, and subtract 3,600 pounds, which is the computed empty weight from step 2, which gives us a carrying capacity of 1,640 pounds. The second section of this guideline explains how to determine the weight and carrying capacity of a Texas titled vehicle. As before, you will need to determine the empty weight of the vehicle based on the evidence. On the Texas title, the empty weight will be shown just below the word weight listed on the title. Once you determine the weight listed on the Texas title, proceed to step 2 for Texas titles. In the example shown, the weight is listed at 4,200 pounds. This is indicated in the red box shown on the sample title. Let's proceed to step 2 to determine if any additional steps are needed. Since this is a Texas title, the empty weight should have already been rounded to a dividend of 100. In the event that this was not done prior and the weight does not end in a dividend of 100 or 00, you will need to round the weight up to comply with Texas weight rules. If your weight is already divisible by 100 or ends in 00, this step is not required. It is important to note that for a Texas title, you will not add the additional 100 pounds like you would with an MCO. In the example shown, our weight is 4,200 pounds, which is divisible by 100. This is indicated by the weight ending in 00. Had the example shown 3,821 pounds, we would need to round up to 3,900 to comply with this rule. Let's proceed to step 3 to determine if a carrying capacity is required. Before we get into step 3, it's important to talk about the 3 ways that carrying capacity can be determined. When determining carrying capacity, the customer always has an option to supply their own intended carrying capacity. The customer supplied carrying capacity will always be used first if it is provided. This carrying capacity can also be less than the 1,000 pounds if they wish. If the customer does not supply or cannot supply their own intended carrying capacity, then you will move on to the next option, which is determining the carrying capacity by using the vehicle's gross vehicle weight rating minus the vehicle's empty weight. To use this option, you will need to get the gross vehicle weight rating from either the vehicle's surrendered ownership document or off the vehicle's permanently mounted information sticker, which is usually located on the vehicle's driver's side door jamb. You will then utilize that gross vehicle weight rating to subtract the empty weight of the vehicle, and the difference will be your carrying capacity. If the gross vehicle weight rating is unavailable on both the surrendered ownership document and the vehicle's permanently mounted sticker, then you can move on to your last option, which is using Table 10-1 of the Texas Title Manual. Table 10-1 provides the minimum carrying capacity for vehicles when the customer does not provide a carrying capacity and the carrying capacity cannot be determined based on the gross vehicle weight rating minus the empty weight. To use this table, you will find your vehicle's empty weight on the table and use the corresponding carrying capacity for that weight. It's important to remember these processes will be used in order, and you cannot jump straight to Table 10-1 unless the previous options have been proven unsuccessful. In the next few slides, we will go through each of these options in more detail. In the example shown, the vehicle is a 2014 Toyota FJ Cruiser, which is an SUV. In this example, the dealer or county will need to ask the customer if they intend to carry a load on the vehicle that does not include passengers. The answer provided will determine how to proceed. For our example, the customer has stated that they intend to carry a load in their FJ Cruiser. Because of this, a carrying capacity is required. For Texas title vehicles, if the customer can supply the carrying capacity they intend to carry in their vehicle, you can use this information as the vehicle's carrying capacity. So in this scenario, the customer has stated that they intend to carry a load, and they state that the vehicle's carrying capacity is 500 pounds. Because of the supplied information, you would enter the empty weight as 4,200 pounds and the carrying capacity as 500 pounds. In the event that the customer cannot supply a carrying capacity, you would then need to determine the vehicle's gross vehicle weight rating from the vehicle's permanently mounted information sticker. You would use the gross vehicle weight rating listed on the sticker and subtract the empty weight of the vehicle. The difference will be your vehicle's carrying capacity. In our example, the customer is now stating that they do not have a supplied carrying capacity, so we then located the information sticker on the door jamb and found a gross vehicle weight rating of 5,665 pounds. We would then take our empty weight from step 1, which is 4,200 pounds, and subtract it from the gross vehicle weight rating on our sticker, which is 5,665 pounds, giving us our carrying capacity of 1,465 pounds. If you cannot get a customer supplied carrying capacity and you cannot determine the gross vehicle weight rating, you would then utilize Table 10-1. This table reflects the minimum carrying capacity for trucks based on empty weight, only if the owner or applicant cannot provide the vehicle's carrying capacity and the gross vehicle weight rating cannot be determined. So going back to our example, the customer has now stated that they intend to carry a load in their FJ Cruiser, but they're unsure of what the vehicle's carrying capacity is. Since the customer cannot supply this capacity, we would then attempt to get the gross vehicle weight rating off the vehicle's information sticker. In our example, we notice that the vehicle's information sticker is missing or is too deteriorated to determine the gross vehicle weight rating. At this point, we would need to reference Table 10-1 located in Chapter 10 of the Texas Title Manual. This would be used to determine our carrying capacity. Since the empty weight of the vehicle is 4,200 pounds, the corresponding box on the table would be 6,000 pounds or less, which shows a minimum carrying capacity of 1,000 pounds. In our new scenario, the customer would have an empty weight of 4,200 pounds and a carrying capacity of 1,000 pounds. The important note here is Table 10-1 is only applicable when a customer is unable to supply a carrying capacity and a gross vehicle weight rating cannot be determined. If the customer can supply the carrying capacity, then that carrying capacity can be less than the minimums indicated on Table 10-1. Because of this, it is important to let customers know that if their registration is for less than what they are carrying, they can be cited by law enforcement for incorrect registration. It is especially important to mention this when a customer insists on having a lower carrying capacity for the vehicle than what is recommended. Next, let's cover how to determine the weights for an out-of-state title. When looking for the weight on an out-of-state title, it's important to note that other states may refer to the empty weight as empty weight, unladen weight, shipping weight, or curb weight, which are all acceptable variances. These refer to the vehicle's weight without passengers, cargo, or fluids. If your title does not clearly indicate an empty weight or the weight shown is not clearly indicated that it is an empty weight, you can utilize the information contained in RTB 010-16 to help in determining an empty weight for a vehicle. Once you have determined the empty weight using either the out-of-state evidence you have or the websites provided on RTB 010-16 or with the weight certificate, you can proceed to step 2. Continuing the same process as with MCOs and Texas titles, if the weight listed on the out-of-state title is not a multiple of 100, then we must round up to the next 100 pounds. Like with the Texas title, we will not add an additional 100 pounds. In the example shown, the New York title reflects a weight of 3,019 pounds as indicated in the red box shown on our sample. Since 3,019 pounds is not a multiple of 100 or does not end in 00, we must round that weight up to the next 100 pounds. In this example, 3,019 pounds rounds up to 3,100 pounds, which is your new empty weight for processing. Let's proceed to step 3. We are showing this slide again before we get into step 3 for our out-of-state titles because the same process applies for these vehicles as well. You will need to determine the carrying capacity by going through each option in order until the carrying capacity is determined. Step 3 for an out-of-state title is to determine the carrying capacity of the vehicle if a carrying capacity is applicable. Like with the MCO and Texas title, a carrying capacity is always required for trucks, work panel vans, and cargo vans. SUVs, crossovers, and passenger vans where the customer states that they intend to carry a load other than passengers will also require a carrying capacity. In our first example, we will use the information contained on this New York title. Our vehicle is a 1988 Chevy Camaro. On the title, the weight is listed as WT, which is not a clear indicator that the weight listed is an empty weight. Since a Camaro is a car and therefore does not require a carrying capacity, we can utilize the weight listed on the title. The reason for this is, if an out-of-state title indicates a weight and the vehicle does not require a carrying capacity, we can be sure that the weight provided is the total registered weight of the vehicle. If the vehicle requires a carrying capacity, the only way we can be sure the weight on the title is an empty weight or gross vehicle weight rating is if it clearly states that on the title. In summary, with an out-of-state title, if the vehicle is a car, we can use any weight provided. If the vehicle requires a carrying capacity, the weight will need to clearly indicate that it is an empty weight or a gross vehicle weight rating to be utilized. For this next example, we're going to pretend that our title reflected a 1988 Chevy Silverado pickup truck. In this new example, we know that a pickup truck requires a carrying capacity. We also see that there is a weight listed on the title, but the weight on the title simply shows WT and does not specify that it is an empty weight. In this scenario, the weight would not be able to be used since we cannot determine if it is an empty weight or a gross vehicle weight rating. Because of this, we would need to utilize RTB 010-16, which supplies the website that can be utilized to determine empty weight of some vehicles. Let's see what that looks like in the next slide. First, you will navigate to your preferred guide. My preferred guide is www.jdpower.com/cars. So that is what we will be using during this training. An important note is that RTB 010-16 references this website as nativeguides.com, but this website has been decommissioned since JD Power acquired nativeguides.com. So you will need to navigate directly to jdpower.com/cars going forward. You will then find the box that says Get New Car Prices and Used Car Values. Once you find that box, select Choose a Make. On the next screen, you will select the make of the vehicle you have listed on the title. The website will first show a list of the most popular makes. If your vehicle is not on that list, there will be a drop-down at the bottom with a full list of makes. The next screen will give you a drop-down to select the year and body style of the vehicle. First enter the year, and the list below will show all car types for that make and year. For our vehicle, I know that a 1988 Silverado is considered a C1500, so I selected that option. The next page will ask you for the trim level or model of the vehicle. If you know the trim level or model, select the appropriate selection. This is the screen shown on the right of our current slide. If a model cannot be determined by the customer, they will need to get a certified weight slip to proceed. For our example, we're going to say that the customer indicated that this is a half-ton fleet side. The next page will ask you for your zip code. Any zip code will suffice here. After that, it will ask if you would like to select additional options or get a price with standard equipment. If you know which options you would like to add to the vehicle, you can select that. I generally go with the price with standard equipment, unless the customer indicates that additional items were added. Next, it will show you the information on the vehicle. If there are specifications available, they will be shown just under the line that says Change Vehicle where I have highlighted. Since our example is an older vehicle, the guide does not have the specifications available for this vehicle, which is indicated by the Specifications tab not being shown. Because this info is not shown, we are unable to provide an empty weight. You can attempt the second website on RTB 010-16, but in this scenario, there is also no additional information there either. Because an empty weight cannot be determined, a vehicle weight certificate will need to be provided in this scenario to proceed. In the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of a truck that does have the information available. So in our new example, we have a 2015 Chevy Colorado. Again, a carrying capacity is required, but the title does not list an empty weight specifically. In this example, we would follow all the previous search options for our preferred website. Based off the search, in the image on the right, the JD Power website had the specifications tab, and upon scrolling down, I was able to get the weight specifications for the curb weight, which as you remember before is another way of saying empty weight. If this weight does not end in 00, we will need to round it up. Now that we have an empty weight, we can ask the customer if they have a carrying capacity they would like to use with the record. If they supply the carrying capacity, we will utilize that supplied capacity for the record. If they cannot supply a carrying capacity, we will need to utilize the gross vehicle weight rating and empty weight to determine the carrying capacity. If the title supplies a gross vehicle weight rating, we can use that, but like with Texas titles, most out-of-state titles will not supply this. For our example, the gross vehicle weight rating is not supplied. It's important to note that the gross vehicle weight rating cannot be used based off of the website. The customer would need to supply that gross vehicle weight rating based off of the information sticker usually located on the driver's side door jamb. If the customer can supply the gross vehicle weight rating, we would use that to determine our carrying capacity. If they cannot, we would use table 10-1 from the guideline to determine the carrying capacity using the empty weight we just determined. For this example, the customer was able to supply the gross vehicle weight rating based on the sticker, which is 5,200 pounds. If you look at the bottom right of our slide, you will see the equation to determine the carrying capacity. We would take our gross vehicle weight rating from the information sticker, which is 5,200 pounds, and subtract the rounded empty weight from the website, which was 4,100 pounds. And that gives us our maximum carrying capacity of 1,100 pounds. This is the maximum carrying capacity for the vehicle, but if the customer states that they intend to carry a load other than this amount, that is okay, as long as this maximum carrying capacity we just established is not exceeded. Last, we will go over the rare case where an empty weight and a gross vehicle weight rating are listed on the out-of-state title. If the empty weight is clearly indicated and a gross vehicle weight rating is also listed on the out-of-state title, you can utilize those weights to determine the carrying capacity of the vehicle without any additional research required. This is increasingly rare since most states only supply one weight or no weight. In the example shown, the New York title shows an empty weight and a gross vehicle weight rating. Using this information, we would simply subtract the rounded empty weight of 3,100 pounds from the gross vehicle weight rating of 5,200 pounds, and that would be our max carrying capacity for the vehicle, which is 2,100 pounds. This is the maximum carrying capacity for the vehicle, but if the customer states that they intend to carry a load other than this amount, that is okay, as long as the maximum carrying capacity we just established is not exceeded. In the case where an empty weight cannot be determined based on the surrendered out-of-state evidence and the web resources www.kbb.com or www.jdpower.com/cars do not provide an empty weight for the exact make and model of the vehicle being processed, a certified weight certificate will be required. Additionally, if there are concerns by the processing entity about the weight of any vehicle, a weight certificate may be requested. Next, let's review the title and registration class flowchart. This resource will help you process basic title and registration transactions simply by answering the questions in the box and following the arrow that pertains to your answer. This flowchart will assist you in ensuring you are selecting the correct vehicle classification and registration class in ePlate and webDEALER to ensure your transactions do not get returned or stuck in the system with an error. Please note that this flowchart is to assist in standard vehicle classifications and registration classes. If a customer is requesting special registration, for example, farm plates, that information will need to be taken into consideration when entering your information into ePlate or webDEALER. Let's proceed. For our first example, I will be using a large pickup truck to walk us through the flowchart and enter the information in ePlate and webDEALER to show the process. I will also show common mistakes that are made that cause returns and errors within the system. Our vehicle for this example is a 2009 Ford F-350 pickup truck. If we start at the top of the flowchart, the first box asks, is the vehicle a car? Then it specifies that sport utility vehicles, trucks, vans, and crossovers are not classified as cars and should select no. Since our vehicle is a truck and not a car, we would select no and follow the no arrow to box 2. Box 2 asks us, is this a truck with a bed or a cargo van? Since this is a pickup truck, we will select yes and follow the arrow to the third box. Box 3 then asks, does the vehicle's gross weight exceed 10,000 pounds? Our vehicle's gross weight is approximately 12,000 pounds, so we will select yes and proceed to the final box, which will show our vehicle class and registration class. For this example, our vehicle class would be truck greater than 1 and registration class equals truck more than 1 ton. Now that we know our correct vehicle and reg class, let's look at where this information will be entered in ePlate and subsequently webDEALER. We will need to launch our ePlate application and proceed to new plate assignment. If you're unsure how to do this, you can review our ePlate training videos to get a full understanding of ePlate before proceeding with your transaction. Once you start a new assignment, the ePlate system will prompt you for the VIN of the vehicle you will be assigning the plate to. Then it will take you to the license plate assignment - confirm vehicle page. On this page, there will be a box that allows you to select vehicle class. Oftentimes, this box will already show a selection based on the previous title information, but sometimes it may not have anything selected and will prompt you to choose your own option. Either way, you should verify that the correct selection is made based on the information in your flowchart. After selecting the vehicle class, we will proceed through the ePlate assignment process until we get to the license plate assignment - sales information screen. Here you will enter the date of sale, select if the vehicle will be exported, and then select title and registration in Texas if it is to be titled and registered in Texas. After this, you will be given the registration class list dropdown. In this dropdown, you will see a list of registrations that are applicable to the vehicle class selected. Since our transaction does not have any sort of special registration request by the customer, we will select the registration class determined in the flowchart, which is truck more than 1 ton. Once you have retrieved a plate with the information you entered, you will have one last chance to verify information entered, then you will need to save the plate assignment. No additional processing will be required in ePlate that pertains to the flowchart. Now, let's proceed to webDEALER and verify the section that the flowchart applies to. The first screen in webDEALER that reflects the vehicle class and registration class is the vehicle information screen. For our vehicle, the 2009 Ford F-350, this screen should show the vehicle class as truck and registration class as truck more than 1 ton, in accordance with what was entered in ePlate. If this information does not match, then the information entered in ePlate was entered incorrectly and will need to be corrected before processing your transaction in webDEALER. Once the information has been verified in the previous slide, you will have one last opportunity to verify the information on your title preview screen. If the information is correct and matches your flowchart, this transaction should be good to go as long as there are no other errors within the transaction. Now that we know what a good transaction looks like, let's review a common mistake dealers make when processing ePlate and webDEALER that can lead to returns and system errors. In the example shown, the processor did not use the flowchart and selected the option that they thought would work with their type of vehicle during the plate assignment that was completed in ePlate. The vehicle class selected was passenger truck, which in theory would sound correct because this is a Ford F-350 and it carries passengers and it is a truck. For processing though, this will cause an error once finalized in webDEALER. Additionally, the processor then selected registration class that they thought would work as well, but was also incorrect. It is important to note that ePlate and webDEALER will allow you to select these incorrect options and will not indicate an error until the transaction is submitted to the county. If the county discovers the error, the transaction will be returned and will need to be resubmitted after the corrections are made, which may lead to additional late penalties. If the county does not see the error and approves the transaction, they will not be able to accept payment on the transaction because they will receive an error indicating that a new plate must be issued due to the incorrect classifications. These types of errors are not easily corrected and sometimes require a service ticket, which increases the processing times. In our last example, we will utilize the flowchart to determine the correct vehicle class and registration class for a sport utility vehicle or SUV. I do believe most of you have grasped the basic idea from the previous example, but SUVs, crossovers, and passenger vans have a unique option to them that allows the purchaser to choose if they would like to have a carrying capacity. Depending on their answer, a different registration class may be required. Let's follow our flowchart and see where this option comes into play. Our vehicle for this example is a 2014 Toyota FJ Cruiser. The first box asks, is the vehicle a car? Then it specifies that sport utility vehicles, trucks, vans, and crossovers are not classified as cars and should select no. So since our vehicle is an SUV and not a car, we would select no and follow the no arrow to box 2. Box 2 asks us, is this a truck with a bed or a cargo van? Since this is an SUV, we will select no and follow the no arrow to the third box. Box 3 asks, will the purchaser use the vehicle to carry a load or tow items regularly? To answer this question correctly, you will need to ask your customer. If they state that they will use the vehicle to carry a load or tow items, then you will select yes and utilize the vehicle class and registration class shown in the yes box. If they say no, you will select no and you will utilize the information in the no box. If you look at the flowchart, you will notice that each answer has the same vehicle class, but then has a different registration class. It is very important to select the correct option pertaining to your transaction, or you may see the same error from the previous slide, which will cause delays in processing your transaction. We will not cover ePlate and webDEALER for this example, but the most important part is to verify that the information entered in those applications matches what is indicated in your flowchart in order to avoid errors. On this slide, you'll find several training and resource links that you can use anytime. The first QR code will take you to our training video library. The second QR code provides access to our resource document library. And the third QR code will take you directly to the webDEALER Systems Resource playlist on YouTube. These resources are available so you can revisit trainings whenever needed and continue building your knowledge at your own pace. Before we finish, there's one more important resource we want to mention. Be sure to connect with us by clicking the envelope icon located at the bottom of our homepage to sign up for GovDelivery communications. Subscribing to these updates will help you stay informed on current TxDMV policies and procedures, rule changes, form updates, training announcements, and other important information. These updates are one of the best ways to stay current with the changes that may affect your dealership operations. If you have questions related to this training content, you can always contact us directly by email at vtr-training@txdmv.gov. We appreciate the work dealerships do every day, and we're always happy to help provide guidance and training support whenever possible. This concludes today's training. On behalf of the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, thank you for taking the time to participate and for your continued partnership. We appreciate everything you do to help keep Texas title and registration transactions accurate and efficient. Thank you again, and have a great day.